through the implementation of digital content with Edmentum's EducationCity. It's going to be a really good discussion, and I'm delighted and excited to say that I'm joined by 3 schools across Kenya. They've generously given up their time to share with me and you their story and have an open discussion about the success and challenges they've experienced with implementing digital learning. I'm joined today by Abura Apini from Jaffery Academy, Kelly Pugh by Braeburn School in Gatanga, and Miranda McGovern from Hillcrest International School. So before I hand over to the panel to introduce themselves and their school, I'd like to invite any of the attendees listening to join in the discussion, either using the chat feature or by asking a question in the Q&A box. So please do say hello. Let us know where you're joining from today as well, through that chat feature, but also make those comments and ask those questions in the Q&A. So I'd now like to hand over to the panel to introduce themselves and the school. And so let's start with Kelly.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, depending on where you are in the world. My name's Kelly Pugh. I'm the assistant head teacher of a school called Braeburn School. It started in 1979, so very old and well-established school. There is one of 9 schools that I work at, and we've all used EducationCity. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. And Abura?
Hello, greetings everyone. I'm Abura Apin from Jaffery Academy Mombasa. I serve the school as the lead coordinator. Jaffery happens to be one of the leading schools in the coastal city of Kenya. Thank you, Karibuni.
Thanks, Abura. And finally, Miranda.
Hello, everyone. My name is Miranda McGovern, and I work at Hillcrest. Like Braeburn, Hillcrest is also a really old school in Nairobi. I am the head of early years, and I was introduced to EducationCity about 5 years ago when I was working for GEMS. And I can say that we were ever so grateful to have EducationCity during the lockdown. And in this sharing roundtable, I'd like to tell you more about that. Okay.
Great, thanks, Miranda. So now, one of the things that links these schools together, as Miranda mentioned, is that they all use our online program, which is called EducationCity. It's going to be mentioned a little bit throughout this roundtable. So if you haven't used EducationCity before or seen it, it's a UK curriculum program that offers content from ages 3 through to 11 in English, maths and science. And it has activities, teacher tools, printables, as well as assessments all included. So it's a huge content and bank of resources. And these schools have been using EducationCity for years. So my first question really is, to the panel, can you tell us a bit about your history with EducationCity, when you first started using it, and if that's changed over the time that you've been using EducationCity? So we'll start with Miranda, if that's okay.
Yeah, so I got to know about EducationCity about 5 years ago, and it was really used as an in-school tool, much more so than, you know, sharing it with the parents. It was really something for the teachers in the school where I was working in. We were also encouraged to do homework on it, but I don't think that took off immediately. And then when we had to go to online learning, everything just kicked into a fast forward mode, and the parents got involved. And even now, so the parents are still very, very much involved with the EducationCity and use it at home as well. So I think it's a journey that's evolved for me as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, how about you, Kelly?
It's very much the same as Miranda. We've been using it for very many years now. I started using it as a class teacher when I first started at Braeburn here. I think it was about 8 years ago now that we've been using it. So we've had lots of training over the years, lots of implementation plans put in place based on what we wanted and needed as a school community. We did start off in the classroom. Everybody had login details, but as Miranda has also said, it it didn't really kick off really with the parents really engaging to what we were offering through it until we had to go online learning. And then it became a very fundamental tool that we were using. Children love it, the teachers love it, and so do the parents. And we were trying to offer as many live lessons as we possibly could during online learning. And actually we had a lot of parents requesting that we could use the EducationCity platform because it allowed children to access it independently. We have now continued to use it while we're back in school learning. We do use it for homework, and now the take up and participation of that has definitely improved. So, you know, getting your community to be part of that and your parents' knowledge of that is really key to making it a success and using it. We've also used it for requests. If parents are requesting additional work, holiday homework, that's something that we don't try to encourage too much. We like to have a balance of life and work, but we have over 80 nationalities within our current school. And to accommodate everybody's needs and their cultural means of education, EducationCity has definitely helped that because it means that they can have free choice, and it's all based on the curriculum that we're following in the classroom.
Great, thanks, Kelly. That's really interesting. How about you, Abura? What's your story with EducationCity?
Thank you, Gareth. As fellow panelists have actually said, let me say that our success story with EducationCity started somewhere around 2017, 2016. Now, at first, we used the site as a supplementary teaching and learning resource with more emphasis on the games and the worksheets. But I must say that these baby steps have made EducationCity an integral teaching and learning resource in our school. Allow me to say that when COVID came, we were way ahead in our usage of EducationCity. And when the government of Kenya decided to close schools, that was the first port of call that we resolved soon. As a school, we said we have to continue learning and we'll continue using the EducationCity. I think those were 2 good weeks that our learners interacted with EducationCity as the sole means of teaching and learning. Thank you.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, you all, like you say, have similar stories with EducationCity in that when the pandemic hit, a lot changed. And I wanted to touch on that really. Over the last 2 years, obviously a lot has changed, and you might not just be EducationCity online with your online programs. I'd be interested to hear the process and the challenges you faced with distance learning during the pandemic. Obviously, you've already mentioned how the usage of EducationCity changed, but how has that 2 years been for your school in terms of online learning? We'll go back to you, Abura. So you're on mute, Abura.
Now, if I got you right, maybe if I could discuss the challenges that we faced, I'll point it clearly that one of the greatest challenges that we face as a school is the inability to get optimum support from parents. This is especially the early years and the KS1 parents. Now, why am I talking about this group of learners, the early years and KS1? You realize that this group needs a lot of support from the parents to access maybe their gadgets, to use their gadgets and everything. So once the parent does not give that optimum support, and the key word here is optimum, once the parent does not give that optimum support, it becomes a bit of a great challenge. Now, as I've just said, for this group of learners to attempt this work, they need a parent to be there to guide them and everything. So how do you go about it? Each and every challenge gives us a learning opportunity. So we realize that when we follow up parents, they'll always be quick at pointing fingers at their busy schedules. But that notwithstanding, we still create time to discuss each child's progress with the child. We also introduced having a slide on our presentations, basically on EducationCity, whenever we have our orientations with parents at the beginning of the year. At that point, we make it clear on the level of cooperation and support we'll need from them. So as I did say, the challenges will always enable us to think more and actually think critically so as to be them. Thank you.
Thanks, Abura. Yeah, how about you, Miranda? What was the challenges the pandemic brought, and how's that looked?
So when we had to close down, it was like from one day to the other. I mean, we were sort of preparing for it. And I think early years were quite lucky because we had EducationCity in place. And the rest of our school, the prep school, had sort of taken a bit of a leave from EducationCity, and they were very quick to then, you know, rekindle it and to join us. So I think we got that set up pretty quickly, and that was very good, because besides having a VLE and live teaching, you know, it's sometimes really nice that the children can be independent. And I agree with Abura that early years need parents, but we also used to say to parents, once your child is set up, step out of the room. EducationCity is something they can do independently. And actually, the programs that they do there, the little activities, they're so much better when they do them independently. And so we found that the children actually picked up that quite well. Something else that I've noticed now that we are not online and we still use EducationCity in class, we had to go one day online because we had a COVID case. And so I immediately sent links for the work on EducationCity. And some parents said, oh, we can still use it. I said, absolutely. And you should have been using it from the day one when I shared your login details for your child. Oh, we didn't know. Oh, it's beautiful. It's so lovely. Oh, yes, we'll be doing it now all the time. So sometimes parents need that little push to say, hey, it's there. Please make use of it. But yeah, no, the challenges of online teaching were there, but I think using EducationCity made it a lot more doable, I would say, especially for early years. I really appreciated having that resource. That was really...
Yeah, that's good. You can see the similarities between the two. And Kelly, what about you? Did you have a similar experience?
Yeah, I'd like to try and approach this from kind of three different aspects, I guess. So the first, the panic of, right, schools are closing, no one's allowed to go back in. And we literally got told this on a Friday, and then on Monday, we were in a situation where we had one day of preparing timetables, online provision, setting up Google Classrooms, which is the platform that we chose as a school to go with, because everything that we have is on Google Drive. And then alongside all that, as a member of the senior management team, we're also thinking about training. How can we prepare our staff? How can we think about safeguarding of our children, the policies, keeping our parents informed but not overwhelmed by the communication also, and everything that comes along with that. So the resources that the children would have at home, do they have access? Are they able to get into the school so they can collect their resources? Or have they panicked and left the country, which was the case for some of our parent bodies, because they didn't have a choice. They were told by their place of work that they had to relocate back home, because if anything happened health-wise, that they wouldn't get the provision or the support in the country. So there was a lot of unknowns. That was the before, that was the very, very early stages. We've got a very productive, proactive, happy team of teachers, I'm privileged to say. And we made it work within one day. Tuesday morning, everybody's online, and we had the timetables, and we made mistakes, we made errors. We were kind to ourselves and let ourselves make mistakes and learn from them. We had lots of training on every step of the way. We continued to do our CPD sessions every week. A lot of it was talking through sessions such as this one that we're hosting right now, sharing examples of good practice, and basically just talking about the struggles that we were facing as a team so that we could kind of be in it together. And a lot of that was a lot of parent partnership was necessary as well, because there's a lot of things that we hadn't considered, like the learning environment. We hadn't set that out, and I didn't think it was something that we had to. The fact that your child would need to be sat at a desk in a quiet area was something that we overlooked. And, you know, we have some large families where they might have 7, 6, 5 children running around. They're all trying to share the same device. So there was a lot of things that had to be put in place and a lot of lessons learned on that journey. So through the process, the second stage, a lot of parent partnership, getting feedback, actively reaching out to parents, seeking for their advice, speaking to the children, still using our student council members to give us their input. What are they enjoying? What are they not? What are they struggling with? How can we help them? They really miss the social. So that's something that we had to incorporate into their timetables. The days were even longer for them. Parents were making them finishing work beyond the hour that we'd scheduled for them. So really putting out procedures and expectations for the teacher, the parent, and the child was really, really key. And it was a long process to get to that point to be able to do that. You know, workload was a significant challenge for everybody involved, regardless of whether you're a parent trying to help your children, trying to juggle work, trying to get the dinner, you know, or whether you're a teacher. And I think a lot of our teachers do have children, have their own children that they're trying to educate as well. So there was a lot of things to consider. So having that community and that positive kind of working relationship with EducationCity and all your logins and your online subscriptions was key. Communicating with your parents also, and trying to bring out as much motivation and joy as possible through trying to keep those socials, and making use of all that free stuff that came on TV and online that you wouldn't normally get to go to. For example, Cirque du Soleil, they had that out there for free for everybody, and a lot of our children have never traveled out of Kenya as well. So for them to experience that, you know, it also opened them up culturally to a lot of other aspects that they wouldn't have necessarily got in the classroom. And then since then, there has been a lot of follow-up, catch-up in the classroom since. I won't go into too much detail, but the main, socially, our children have forgotten how to social. A little bit too hands-on or not at all. They've shied away from it. So pastorally, it has been quite hard because I'm also the designated safeguarding lead for the school. So that's been a challenge. The children's core strength, they've been slouched at their desks. They've not been doing as much physical activity that they would do in the school. So their handwriting, you know, is non-existent for some of them because they're now being used to iPads and tablets. And those are things that we're trying to address slowly in the classroom now.
Thanks, Kelly. Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, that's one thing I'm hearing a lot with all our schools in terms of the change that's happened over the last 2 years, being rushed into a circumstance where you had to make those quick decisions and then having to learn day in, day out in terms of, like you say, that interesting about the learning environment, the little things that, well, they're big things, but you don't think they'd be something you have to think about. But now we're at the other side of it. I'm hearing, or beginning to be, I'm hearing from schools that we're past that new normal phase, but we're now building a new systems and new over the last 2 years. One of the things that has come to the forefront over the last 2 years is blended learning. So the idea of online and in class. If any of you do that approach, can you talk us through what your school's approach has been to blended teaching and learning online without in the classroom? Is it something that you still do? Where are we now? We're 2 years into this pandemic in terms of online learning. Anyone could start that. Abura?
Good, Gareth. It's been a journey. I liked listening to what fellow panelists are saying because we seem to share a lot in common. We seem to share a lot in common. From the first day you were there having to advise parents, I think laptop won't work, I think we need to get these, or I think it's your browser, maybe if you could use the other browser, or it's the bandwidth, you know, arrays of issues. And at that time, we realized we could make as many decisions as possible and that we could review decisions before implementing them. Now, after COVID, I think 1 or so years of pure online learning, we moved on to blended learning. Allow me to take you back. We started with what was more of a flipped classroom or flipped learning. That was for 2 good weeks as we were nearing the end of the term. The following week, we moved on to our VLE, the virtual learning environment. This was a good one. We had to train our teachers. It took us, I think, a week, setting up teachers, upgrading their software. You understand, teaching also goes with the software. So it took us some time to ensure that our teachers were well trained. But apparently kids only interacted with the VLE for a week or 2 weeks and they became smarter than us. You know, a kid will tell you, no, sir, I wish you could do it this way. It works really fast. Sir, please do it this way. And we found the online or the virtual learning taking place so well. So with a lot of caution, we decided now, why don't we try blended learning? And our approach was to have part of the school in school and part at home. So we started with the candidate classes. We said, let's try with the candidate classes. It's from the candidate classes that we checked on our gaps and we fixed what needed to be fixed. Then we moved on to roll it in bubbles and we said, okay, we could have this bubble in school on Monday, the next bubble on Tuesday. So whenever they came to school, those who are at home will do the virtual learning. One good thing with blended learning was that it gave us room to review what had been learned or what kids had covered online. That is when we realized a lot of online was more of theory. Students had stopped writing, students had stopped working out sums traditionally. Google had become their best friends and, you know, bringing in the blended ensured that there was that sense of accountability. Yesterday we did this virtually. Could we see it? Could we check? So from the blended, we moved on to trying having the on-campus. But our on-campus will be interrupted anytime we reported a case. Anytime we reported a COVID case in a bubble, we'll always close that bubble, send the bubble back to virtual learning. However, as we're speaking right now, we are fully on campus. But we are aware of what is happening all over, and that notwithstanding the fact that we are fully on campus, we have put in place good mechanisms that can guarantee successful blended or virtual classes at any point of time. We have up and running a virtual classroom platform. Our teachers will continue having CPDs on all aspects, including our virtual learning. Allow me to collaborate what has just been said. I think there's so many basics that kids forgot during our virtual learning. I remember when we came back physically or on campus sessions, we had to skew our schemes of work to cover most of those concepts that kids or our learners had found a way of evading. This included the writing, creative writing, the handwriting bit, and also simple arithmetics. So these are things that, these are concepts that force us to skew our schemes of work with the gaps in mind. And I'm glad to say that as we're speaking right now, though we can still feel traces of gaps in our learners, you know, the COVID period, I'm not very sure if we'll ever forget the gaps it caused, but in as much as we try to mitigate these, we still feel some gaps. You teach a concept and you feel like, didn't you learn this in this year? And they tell you, some we learned it virtually. And you know, now I have to create time just to come back and review it. I think all in all, it's been a roller coaster of experiences, and we are glad that it happened during our time, during our generation. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruno. That's really interesting. I'm glad to hear that you've started to close some of them gaps. And I really liked what you said about the students knowing more than the teachers about the virtual learning environment. That's another universal case, I think. It happens everywhere. And Kelly, how about you? Did you have a similar experience? What's your blended learning like in the school?
To be honest, at the minute, we still have some children who are unable to get back into the country due to their personal circumstances of COVID, regardless of where they are. So it means that we are still teaching our children online, some of them, whilst also juggling teaching the children that are in the classroom. So the approach that we have taken is we've gone back to the timetables that we were using for our online learners, where they were part days. So half of their lessons are live with a specialist teacher, and half of them are choice boards, which they access independently. So for those children, they're fully online still, unfortunately, but the numbers are decreasing, which means that the now children that we have in the classroom is definitely nearly at full capacity, which is great. With regards to those that are in the physical classroom for their blended learning, we've tried to go back to how our school would have traditionally been teaching in the classroom with pens and paper. We need to build up their core strength and their handwriting skills, because they went for 2 years with very, very little, or if they did do it, we don't know how much of that support was given by parents holding their pen. So we really need to go back to the foundations of education here and building up their core strength, so that they've got the strength basically to keep writing. The expectation of a 7 and 8 year old to be able to write an A4 page of paper writing is not possible at the moment. So we've gone back to our traditional ways. However, what we've learned from being online and all the technology that's being used, it's been a really, really good tool for our children with English as an additional language. Google Translate is our new best friend in every classroom. We've also got iPads. We don't allow our children to bring in their own devices. From the online risks and safety aspects that we couldn't manage as a school during the pandemic, to allow them to bring in their devices and try and manage that in our school would also be another area that we would need to look at. So we use school equipment. We've got iPads, we've got our computing suites. We do have a new ICT suite that was opened literally just as COVID started. So there is access to the computing suite more often for a school that's so large. So teachers are definitely booking the computing suites and the iPads more than they ever were doing before. But we're trying to make sure that there's a really good balance, and getting that balance is key.
And do you find the online learning, so EducationCity, obviously they used it a lot more during when they were virtual. How has that changed since you've come back?
So of course we didn't want them to lose all that online learning that they've learned. You know, they've also learned a lot from being online and getting on those online subscriptions. So we don't want to hinder that progress. Even though it does feel like there are generations more than us, just like Abura was saying. So what we do is we set weekly homework through EducationCity. Our home learning approach has totally changed since the pandemic as well, having had a window into everybody's home lives and the stress that it can cause as a parent and a family member. We have a very, very long day in Braeburn. They come to school, the school day starts at 8 and school clubs don't finish till 5, and that's every day. And by the time the child can sometimes get home because of Nairobi traffic, you're talking they're not getting home till 6:30, and they need to eat and have their bedroom routines to make sure they get an adequate sleep, and also family and downtime. So we do set homework, and it does tend to be through EducationCity for English and maths every week. We do projects through science, and some of that is through EducationCity also, but that's through choice. And we've taken the approach that we don't give consequences for children not completing their homework. But we do have a homework club set up if parents would really like their children to complete it, so that there's a teacher there to support them and they can use all the online equipment that we have in school.
That's great. Thanks, Kelly. That's interesting. Miranda, do you have a similar experience to either Abura or Kelly, or how's blended learning look like in your school?
So I just want to comment on Kelly first.
Of course, yeah.
I think that's a really good idea, you know, to learn from the period that we've behind, and that you've got some insight to that. Can you put my computer on? Yes. Sorry, my battery is running out. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
No, the plug is not on. There you go. Sorry, excuse us for that.
That's okay.
Anyway, so it's so what I'm saying, I think it's so good that you learned from the experience of this home learning and of the blended learning, and then adjusted the homework to that as well. I think that's really lovely. We had blended learning, and you know, my contributions today are, yes, reflecting from the whole school, but also that's where I am. So first of all, I think it's important to say that for early years, it's a blessing that we're back in real school. There's nothing that can beat a real day in a real school for a child between 2 and 5. To tell you the truth, you know, all the learning in that age group is so socially geared, so socially linked to everything you do. You do it with a friend. It's our start of our development and our learning process, and it's all about, you know, who you are and who you become in that little community. So I think nothing beats real school. But thinking back, I also have fond memories of the blended learning, because yes, you had a day in school and then you'd say, and I'll see you tomorrow online. And online you'd say, and we'll be back in school.
I think we've lost Miranda there. That's a shame. We'll get her back in a moment. But yeah, no, I think she raised a really good point about the early learners, how important it is to be in that physical space. Even if you are using online resources, being together and seeing the reactions of each student, even playing the games on EducationCity, for example, won't beat a Zoom conversation. If we were face-to-face, Miranda wouldn't have just popped off randomly, so that would have been different. But in terms of that classroom approach then, with EducationCity, obviously, like that, you will have tactics and programs that the school put in place to ensure that EducationCity has been successfully embedded into the day-to-day practices. Can anyone talk us any examples of that, and any challenges you faced along the way? And if you did find any challenges, how did you overcome those? So either Abura or Kelly, do you have any thoughts on that?
Thank you. Kelly, let me take it, then you'll flesh my response. So basically, children learn best when they're given consistent routines. When we have consistent routines, our learners will learn really, really best. So we've worked towards ensuring that we have a consistent routine in terms of our engagement with EducationCity, or in terms of embedding our daily activities with our digital literacy. Now, what are some of these routines that we have put in place? The first is motivation. And we pursue these either using intrinsic motivation or extrinsic. If we realize that a child cannot push himself to do something extra on EducationCity, then we have a bait. We award our students on emerging top on the leaders board. There's nothing as sweet as having your name projected during the assembly, having been the top in the leaders board. We also do share some of their certificates on their parents' WhatsApp groups. This excites parents so much, and the next minute you find all parents asking you, what about my daughters? What about my sons? So I believe the motivation has really worked in embedding this. Then we have to agree that our kids, learners, learn better when they realize that their teachers are taking an active leading role. The moment learners realize that even Mr. Bura loves EducationCity, that is the very moment that they will change their perception and habit. Way back in 2018, when I was relatively new, I had a class And you'll find that at the end of the day at 3:30, a child will come and tell you, sir, we have a date. We'll meet at 8 p.m. Where? Play live. And you know, when kids realize that our teachers are taking a leading role, so exciting. Let me give you another just example that we had recently last term. We had our mathematics marathon. And to spice up the week, it takes a week. To spice up the week, we said, fine, boys and girls, at 8 p.m., we'll be having our play live. Gareth, believe me, our kids were super mathematicians. None of our teachers could beat them. So it will meet the following day in the morning, and it will all be stories of how I outsmarted Mr. Bura, how I outsmarted teacher so-and-so. Teacher so-and-so couldn't amass half of my points. And you know, that excitement building up. So I feel one of the things that has really helped us to have Education City as part of us is the active leading role taken by teachers. Then still on the routine, we have weekly extended learning activities. These are shared to parents as something like homework over the weekend, relaxation. You tell them, after all, you're doing it on your favorite gadget, you're doing it on your iPad. It's not the homework that you think of. We try and lace it with some icings just to ensure that these kids love it. Then another thing that has helped us embed Education City in our programs is the tracking of their progress and discussing feedback with both learners and parents. The moment you track a child's progress and you discuss this feedback with the mother, the father, and the child, then the child realizes that it's not just a game, there's something really, really important. And by discussing this with parents, we involve them fully. We involve the parents fully. We ensure that when we have our orientations, we do tell them what we'll expect of them on Education City. We do also organize workshops for them so that they understand where we're coming from, so that they work with us. Thank you, Gareth.
I love that, Abura. And if people don't know what Play Live is, it's like an online arena where students can compete against each other. But as Abura rightly points out, teachers often get involved and it becomes quite obsessive. I often do those competitions, so I can see why you love it, Abura. Miranda, I think you're back. You were making a really good point, so I'm sorry that we lost you there. But we were just talking about the tactics and programs that your teachers or your school put in place to ensure that Education City is successfully embedded. And you might have heard Abura mention a few things there. How do your teachers use it in the classroom generally?
In the rest of the prep, it's very much used as a homework tool as well. So besides using the elements in class for teaching, it's setting the homework. And you know, I think our teachers got also very excited because when Natasha shares our usage with us, you know, it also highlights the teachers who are very sort of skilled in putting, you know, my homework on my city. And, you know, you can mention to the teachers, oh, you had the highest number of logins, or your students are the best at this, and this student gets a certificate. So I think in that way, it's really embedded that it's become, you know, part of the way we do things at school. Not everyone, but I think the teachers that do it are then equally enthusiastic and share it with the others and say, you should try it, it's amazing. And yeah, I think that's one of the strong things in the prep side. In early years, it's very much as a support now, just for the in-class. Like I said before, in early years, there's nothing that beats your normal school day, where you can go outside, where you have your Play-Doh, where you have your paint, where you have your little science projects, where kids have hands-on learning. And because I think in this time and age, children have so much access to tablets, to other electronic devices. I think real school almost compensates for that sort of lifestyle. You know, parents allow their children a lot of tablet time. I now say, if they have screen time, just log Education City in for them, put it on, put the app on, and it's then at least it's something which is also educational and will benefit your child. And so we're working on that with the parents. Yeah, that's
a really good point. I think as you say, everyone's got so much screen time these days that you have to have it targeted to something that's going to benefit them, not just watch this or, it's about using it effectively. And that's something else we probably learned the last 2 years is how to get the most out of the programs that we do have. I don't know if you agree with that. But yeah, what about you, Kelly?
Well, I think just to add on really is that the support that we get from the Education City representatives is really, really amazing. They are so prompt in communication, and I work a lot with Natasha Bailey, who's the International Implementation Specialist at Education City, and we kind of have midpoint reviews. We had one about 2 weeks ago. We have an implementation plan, and she's like, okay, where is your school heading? Let's look at the usage. But she very homes in on what we want as a school. So what is your school improvement plan? What are your targets for next academic year? Is there anything that we can help you with that? And every little target that we had as a school, and then we wanted the support of Education City, they've made the changes to accommodate us. So we said we wanted ways of having revision booklets and templates. They created it. We wanted to have more content for a certain topic, and then it was created. One of our big things was times table with the new lower key stage 2 end of test for multiplications, and that's something that we really, really wanted to push within our school. And Education City then created the times table guests and the practice questions and activities, which has really, really supported us. So I do feel like Education City listen, they act on it. If there's anything that we don't know how to do, they're always there to support. One thing that we didn't do when we originally got set up was we didn't probably make the most of the training that's on offer. We used to have quite a lot of big staff turnover every year because of the climate that we're in, I guess. International school, we have a lot of expatriate teachers. They come for 3-4 years and want to move on, and so that'd be quite consistent, and we never took advantage of the fact that the training can be offered and it's part of your subscription. So that's something that we definitely do now and have done in the last couple of years. And we do a refresher and anything that's new. Natasha always does that. So our next step actually, as Abura was saying, is basically like leading the parent workshops for us as well, just to reach our new children joining the school and parent body, because again, we have on average about 120 new every academic year. So we want to make sure that our whole community is making the most of the subscription.
Great. No, that's good. And it's similar to what Miranda was saying, is finding those teachers that really use it well and promote that throughout the school, because you'll always have someone who uses it maybe more than the others. So it's also that's what our team look for, and Natasha is really great at finding those teachers who are really keen on it and helping promote those to other people. It's really good. We've just got just over 10 minutes left, so if anyone does have any questions, do pop them in the Q&A box. It'd be really interesting to hear your thoughts or questions. But what I wanted to hear about is what the impact of Education City has had on the students and teachers. And we'll go to Miranda first, if that's okay. So a thought on any sort of impact? That would be really interesting to hear.
I think one of the biggest impacts for me, what I see, is independence. You know, I see it every year in FS2, their first week when you do your first sounds and use Education City. After that, you know, they just go to the computer, they know how to find the sound, they know how to do the little activity, and they just don't need you. So I think it's independence that really stands out for me. When you use Education City, the children become independent. And we also encourage that to the parents when we either set homework or we say to the parents, we've done this and this and this. They can do this at home. Let them go on. This is your login. This is your password. Go for it. You don't need to sit next to your child. So independence for me stands out. Yes.
Nice, I like that. Abura?
Yes, I can't agree further with Miranda. That's a good one, the independence aspect. But I look at it differently from our perspective at Jaffery Academy, and I'll pick up a subject like mathematics. So what I've seen our teachers of mathematics do is get a concept class. Tomorrow we'll be looking at this concept, algebra. Now class, I've put up some tasks on EducationCity, and mostly these tasks are, they are learn screen. So we'll have children go home, watch the learn screens, learn a lot. So it's more of the flipped classroom. So the child learns a lot. Then the following day, children come excited, ready to share the experiences. So I feel EducationCity has enabled children to own the learning process. We have a group of students who can actually talk of, this is my learning, this is what I'm doing, I'm planning for tomorrow. Then I must also say that EducationCity has eased our burden when it comes to coming up with the resources. The worksheets are so good, well thought out, and also the lesson activities. You know, sometimes you want to teach a concept and you feel like, how will I excite the class? Then all of a sudden you remember this, oh, I think it's always there for us. So I feel that the EducationCity has been of great help when it comes to resources. This has saved us a penny. We are not subscribing to so many sites because we can access everything. Then I must also say that the fun aspect, you know, the 21st century learners are not like us. We went to school knowing that the only business taking us to school was learning. Fun was not part of it. But apparently we have to less fun with the learning to keep the 21st century child excited and going. So EducationCity gives us that. I must also say that the assessment aspect in EducationCity, you know, when you assess a child and then the EducationCity gives you the feedback, goes ahead to tell you how many learners missed this, which option did they go for, which concept do you need to teach. You know, that differentiated analysis gives a teacher an easier time while analyzing performance in a test or an assessment. Kelly?
I think you've both highlighted it really. I think the biggest for us is the motivation. The animations are so interactive and so child friendly. They just love it. And you know, as a parent, to be able to see your child interacting on a child, you know, it's child friendly. It's also a safe setup. They're not at risk like all the other games and things that they have out there. And more importantly, it's educational. So yeah, I think the animations, it's perfect, child friendly, step by step. And like Miranda said, independence.
I love it. Thanks, everyone. That's really good. We've had a question come through, sort of touching on what Abura is saying about the student scores and data. Well, the question is like, how do you use the student scores and data that you receive through EducationCity? And does it help with your teaching and learning? And if so, how? Does anyone want to take that question?
I can take that one.
Yeah.
So it gives you basically gives you a bit of like a gap analysis, and it basically tells you how long, if you want the timer on it, you can see how long it's taken for a child to complete it. So that's an indication on how confident they are with the concept that you've set for them. You can also do it so that they can repeat it. So it can tell you how many times that they've tried to do it. And it'll give you the whole overview for every single activity. even for the tasks that you don't set, you can click on a child's name and it will tell you exactly what they've been focusing on. Again, a really big indicator to what they're struggling with or what they find really, really easy, so that you can build on that in the classroom further.
I've said it better myself. Thanks, Kelly.
Maybe Gareth?
Yeah, go ahead, Bahura.
Yep. If I could add, we love the fact that we can tailor make our preferences. You know what? You can sit and say, I'll need a countdown timer. I know my students, I'll need to set the time. Do I give them a 20% more time, 40% more time? Then just as Kelly has said, the fact that you can look at how they've performed and everything, that makes it so well. Then the grade for certification, you know, we can talk of, let me make it 50%, you score 50% to get, you are awarded a certificate, and 80% you're awarded a certificate. And finally, the icing on the cake is the fact that you can track the success and learning opportunities for each child. Keyword here is each child, using the success tracker. I love it.
Perfect. Thanks, Bahura. So I've got time for 2 more questions, I'd say. The first one is, we've spoken a lot about how you've used EducationCity in the past, how that's changed, and how your online learning has changed over the last few years. What are your plans and hopes for the future in terms of your use of digital content in learning? And that could be EducationCity or any digital content. We'll start with Kelly.
Oh, a good question. I need to think about it. I think it's building on what we were saying before about getting that balance right. So trying to incorporate it more in the classroom without it taken away from what we do in a school that they can't access at home, as Miranda was saying. You know, the biggest thing through COVID is the social aspect. I've now got upper key stage 2 children who don't know how to socialize properly, but they're also going through puberty, and that's a really, really big challenge for them. And I think making sure that we don't lose sight of that pastoral welfare first, and making sure that you've got really, really good firewall procedures and policies in place to protect you as a school as well is really, really key. And also, you know, once upon a time, it would be like if anything happened online and there's disagreements online, or it happened at home, and now it's very much the school's place to have to deal with that from a safeguarding point of view. So it's making sure that we are educating the pupils with what other trends are happening online, and exposing them to the safe websites and safe online subscriptions so that they can make those choices themselves independently. One of the biggest things that we've done now is on our weekly communication to parents that sends out updates in our newsletters, we also send out a safeguarding online trends, links and information so that parents can also help with that. So partnership is really, really important with regards to that online use in the classroom, I would say.
Thanks, Kelly.
I hope I answered that properly.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Miranda, what are your school's plans for the future in terms of online learning? You sort of touched on it before.
Yeah. So when you read out the question, I immediately thought of the word balance, and that's what Kelly said. I think a balanced future is my wish, not to lose what we've learned, to take it along on our journey, but depending on what area of the school you are, but making sure that it is about the children. It's not about the technology. The technology is a tool, and my future is a wish for balance. And when you said about what children have missed, I just realized that, for instance, our FS1 children, this is their first year of school. They've not been to school, and they're so than a normal FS1. And you shouldn't forget those little signs that we need time to completely recover. We need time to really get it all sorted out. If we need to go back to this, at least we've got experience. So that's what I wanted to contribute. Thanks.
Thanks, Miranda. And finally, Bahura.
We are talking of learning in 2050, right?
Yeah, go for it.
I believe that the post-COVID era will see a lot of accelerated integration of IT in our education. And as a school, we actually believe that this should find us more than ready. We are investing heavily in our ICT infrastructure, that is the hardware and the software. We're putting in place measures that will ensure that 2050 finds that way ahead. We've also introduced AI robotics. Super exciting, yeah. So I believe the future so bright. We have good plans for it. We are working with our parents together, and we have great partners like EducationCity. I must mention that Hali has been of great support when it comes to monitoring how we use EducationCity. So with you watching our back, the future is safe.
Thanks, Abura. One last question for everyone then. It doesn't have to be a long answer if you don't want to, but what would you say are the most important elements to consider when implementing something like EducationCity? So any advice you can give to anyone listening or watching about implementing or starting out with EducationCity? Anyone can go if they want to. Yeah, we'll go with Miranda.
Training. It comes down to training. You know, we're always able to implement something better if we've had the proper training. And otherwise, we don't use it to its fullest potential. So very short answer, training. Invest in training.
Seeing nodding from Callie there. Is that what you were going to say, Callie?
Yeah, 100%. And making the most of the support that EducationCity staff can give you as well. They are on hand all the time. If you even want your staff to have one-on-one training with them, they're there to do it. And they're more than willing and excited to do it. So that's definitely something that we need to kind of make the most of also.
Abura, anything to add there?
Good. I can't agree further with Miranda and Kelly. However, I believe that the first thing should be exploiting the trial period fully. Subscribe for the trial period, make use of it. Next thing, make a survey to determine your readiness. You have the gadgets, the network. What about the parents? Then now, what about the teachers and students? Are they motivated? So I'll talk over making good use of the trial period, surveying your readiness, and working hand in hand with your not service provider, but with the EducationCity partners. Thank you.
Thanks, Abura. It sort of leads me on to the end of the webinar. So thanks so much to Abura, Kelly and Miranda for that. It was really interesting listening to and learning a bit more about your school and your thoughts on online learning. I thought it was really fascinating. If anyone who's watching is interested to learn a bit more about EducationCity or has additional questions for any of the panelists, you can contact us with the details that are on screen. So our email or on Facebook, on Twitter, and we can forward those questions on. But equally, as Abura said, you can have trials of EducationCity if you want to take a look. So again, I just want to extend my thanks to all the panelists and for everyone tuning in. And I hope you have a great day. So thanks everyone, and goodbye.